Well, we're now ready to speak with our distinguished guest, strategist, policy analyst, and group CEO, Global Investment and Trade Company, on progress made by Nigeria's aviation sector in the past 1 year of the Tinubu administration and what windows that could be explored to achieve much more in the second year. Good morning and welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. So let's get straight into it. Let's talk about, first off, policy and strategic direction. How would you assess the strategic direction of Nigeria's aviation sector 1 year into Tinubu's administration? Also putting that off the back burner of this return of the Emirates flight come October 1st after a lot of back and forth. Do you believe it's something that we need, or is it something that we should put a pause on?
Okay, thank you very much for that question, even though I'll call it an omnibus question that may not necessarily be connected. First off, to look at the strategic direction of the industry since the inception of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration, which is, let's say, activated about 9 months ago, if we consider at the time the Honorable Minister Festus Keyamo SAN resumed duties. I would say I give it on a slightly, on average rating, considering the timelines and the deliverables he has given himself as minister. When he started off, he came with a 5-point agenda. If I can remind us, he mentioned ensuring strict compliance with safety and regulations, and then talking about support for the growth and sustenance of the local industry, improvement of infrastructure, and development of human capital capacity. If we are going to rate performance along these lines, I will, in my own opinion, rate slightly average. And I will say it probably because the minister is not ab initio an industry expert. So I will say he has tried this far, given the fact that he has come into a new territory, beating the learning curve before start making what I call the quick impacts. I will talk about things that I feel could have been done better thus far. Now, coming to talk about my forte, which is strategy. I don't think, with all due respect, we've had any strategic direction, for the industry thus far. And in fairness to the minister and the industry, because maybe some of us have been talking about industry expertise for people to lead particular specialist type technical industry sector. So it's not the fault of the minister. But that being said, I think 1 year is also okay to beat the learning curve. And now is the time to sit and have a proper strategy that will drive the industry for the next 3 years, because we've almost lost a whole year, given the fact that we are facing socio-economic vagaries and indices, for which aviation should be the catalyst, to support, the economic recovery of this country. Indeed, so far, I don't see from a national strategic perspective or from policy that aviation is actually properly positioned to drive the strategic direction of the socio-economic recovery of Nigeria. Talking about Emirates, I wouldn't want to dwell too much on it, because I believe Nigeria is bigger than one particular airline. The industry is big enough. As we can see, we have been resilient. We've been surviving without Emirates. Do we need Emirates now? Well, comme ça, I must say. But of course, the more the merrier. We will talk about the politics or the merits or demerits of how we have been engaging to allow Emirates to come. Of course, I wouldn't say Emirates should not come back. But then what are the lessons we have learned from this imbroglio on our part, so that we can be more forward-thinking, front-facing, and impactful going forward, rather than, running and picking our nose about whether or not Emirates should come back, so that we can be better positioned in the international space with regards to aviation and with regards to foreign policy. I will discuss about that further down the line.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us this morning, sir. Now, the former Minister of Aviation, Osita Chidoka, says that Emirates should not be allowed back in Nigeria without first offering an apology. Do you agree with him? And he's also spoken about the need for the aviation sector and the current minister, Festus Keyamo, to develop protocols for the sector. Do you agree with this? Do we need protocols?
Okay. Oh, yes, definitely. I was saying earlier on that thank you for bringing this question now, because this is the time for me to speak about this. First of all, for the purpose of disclosure, I'm an industry veteran. I can call myself that. I've been in the aviation, I was in the aviation industry for about 9 years, rising to the top echelon as an MD CEO. I also have a running business in the United Arab Emirates, and I experienced almost 20 years out of my 30 years experience understanding the Gulf region and the politics and the business there. So, should Emirates come back? It's a political and business question. Of course, Emirates should come back, or it should come back. We are not going to live in isolation of the global, village or business, as the case may be. But the critical question you have asked, and I think the bric-a-brac between the former minister and the current minister and other stakeholders with regards to how, I think it's the how that is the issue, of whether or not she should tender an apology. I'm going to park the issue of apology and talk about the issues of protocol. How did we get ourselves into this situation? We all know, and with fanfare, some of us supported the position of the former Minister of Aviation, Senator Hadi Thrika, with regard to posturing. But even at that point, some of us raised some critical strategic poses, for us to say, when you go into such a fight, how do you position yourself? I still remain a stickler for Nigeria first, as far as Nigerian foreign policy is concerned. And it is how you position yourself in the beginning determines how you exit, foreign imbroglios when it comes to this kind of situations. So for me, it's not a matter of who is right or who is wrong. The former minister is right to a large extent, because I feel it was a kind of spat on the face of Nigeria with regards to the way and manner the Emirates took some hardline positions. On the part of Nigeria as well, we have not just in aviation been consistently not been strategic on how we engage and how we position ab initio. And that is how we do what is called losing face, to the extent that another country or another airline will be treating us the way we have been treated, and we continue kowtowing to those countries, and at the point in time they can stroll back and take a piece of the pie. Bottom line is this: the minister has a mandate to activate and make sure an aviation, an industry remains operational and sustainable. How he does it is also important, so that going forward, I understand critically how the nuances of negotiations happen in that part of the world, and how you position yourself now with regards to your status and how they see you will determine negotiations. Let me give you an example. The ground handling companies, the services companies, and even the airport, and even the industry. Next time you come for negotiation, you are coming with a weak hand, because they feel they can do anything and get away with it, because they feel you definitely need them. So whenever we are doing these negotiations, I will advise that you have a robust stakeholder engagement, so that you'll be more informed with regards to how you position yourself. I believe the minister went with all good intent and purposes, but when you don't have the full information or the strategy to engage, you may lose some grounds that may affect us in the future. That being said, this remains our country. Nigeria is a sovereign nation. I believe that if Emirates is coming back and we have some positions to put, now is the time to put them forward and ask them to be complied with. Otherwise, I believe that we should continue being firm as regards our sovereignty, and to protect the local industry as well. I tell you, at the end of the day, we will earn our respects, and they will still come back. By the way, we remain the biggest food basket of the airlines in Africa, and we should recognize that in our nuances, in our behaviors, and our engagements.
All right, then, thank you so much for that analysis. But let's talk about, the ongoing efforts that has been put in place by the current administration to improve infrastructure in Nigerian airports. Just this week, plans were announced for a new airstrip in Abia State. But while infrastructure improvements are visible, some would say, what are some of the less obvious policy and systemic issues that you believe continue to impede significant progress in Nigeria's aviation industry?
Thank you very much. Now, for that, we need to take a step back and ask the question, how important is infrastructure in driving our aviation industry? How important is our infrastructure in turning around our economy? And when you ask those quick questions, you put in the middle what is the value or what is the importance of aviation within the critical value chain of our economy? Aviation is an enabler. Aviation is what I call a critical economic platform and gateway. And to that extent, the bigger, the more robust and effective and efficient is our aviation, I believe the better our economy. Now, that being said, I think going forward, we need to, the aviation minister and his team need to sit in the next couple of days, and it is timely so because in the next couple of days, we're going to celebrate 1 year anniversary of the administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. There is need for a retrospection and introspection with regards to how far they have come. There is need for a sectorial strategy. I know we had one that had been brandished about by the former Minister of Aviation, and we can see the holes in it already with graft issues around it, with the Air Nigeria imbroglio that have been subdued, sadly so, to affect a very key sectoral reform that should have been done, which is infrastructure. We know the issues around the Chinese projects and all that. But going forward, I am one that will always say, we hear a lot of noises about policies, but we are not seeing traction and outcomes. You know why? Because the policies are not, drawn out of an overarching strategy. So what you have are knee-jerk activities. You bring out policies to solve this problem, and another problem manifests. Albeit you bring out another policy that creates another problem. Without a robust strategy, what you will have is policy incoherence that will inadvertently draw back the industry. I'm now opening the conversation beyond infrastructure because infrastructure has dependencies and interdependencies. So first of all, we need to have a strategy for this administration. They don't have to throw away what was there before, but there is need for them to look at that strategy, if it is still tenable, or they need to tweak it, or need to have a new strategy. This industry is too big for it to be operated operationally or transactionally, with due respect. There is no way you can do the big wins. Fixing airports, fixing the chillers, fantastic, because they are quick wins. They are low-hanging fruits. Without them, we cannot even sustain the current realities. But we need to move on from there. Other airports, aviation, we are no longer competitive in the aviation space, and yet we remain the biggest platform for aviation in Africa. So suffice it to say, we need to go back and look at that strategy. If we have a robust strategy that is forward-thinking, then you draw out your policies from the strategies, and you can build your processes and procedures from there. And we know that infrastructure is not for the short term, most of the time. But I agree we have the short-term interventions, which minister is trying to do at the moment. But with all due respect, there is need to look at the strategy robustly. This is the time to do it so that in the next 6 months, we won't be talking about the minister. I don't want the minister to be talking about tangential, micro successes. I want the minister to be celebrating big punches, successes, while his CEOs are celebrating this what I call the micro milestones. And I will land with this. One of the achievements of the minister is his passion with regards to safety compliance and safety regulation with compliance with safety and regulation. Which is one of his key agendas, which I totally align with. But that being said, we talked about improving our status at the ICAO level. So a reminder for the industry is to understand that recognizing the autonomy of these bodies is very critical. It's a critical success factor for us to be inching our way up with regards to ICAO or best practices. And my advice to the minister, I totally understand, I totally agree. I'm a Nigerian, I know what we have in the civil service. And I heard him talking loud and clear about bureaucracy. But Honorable Minister, you are the boss. If people don't deliver, apply consequence management. When you apply consequence management once or twice, everybody will fall in line, and let the people running those shifts take responsibility for whatever. If people are not doing their job, I don't believe the minister should do the job for them. They should be shown the way out. This should be a new administration that has zero tolerance for indolence or for corruption. So I wouldn't want him to be reporting these issues, but to be taking action to clean the industry where there is need for cleaning the industry. Otherwise, the industry will be painted in a way and manner that will not be good for us, even in the international space. But infrastructure, yes, you talked about Abia, fantastic. But Abia is just one, with all due respect, amongst other. What about Lagos? What about the increased expansion of Lagos? What about the Lekki airport? Because the Lagos airport is already saturated. We cannot grow vertically or horizontally. What about the other airports? What about agriculture? Agri-value chain keying into, for example, the airport aviation. All this cannot be done if our infrastructure from the big picture perspective remain the same. So the micro conversations should stop. We should talk about the bigger picture, and then the minister driving it as he is, passionately, patriotically, but then with the emotional intelligence and senses of a highly technical, highly sensitive industry, and indeed strategic.
Thank you very much, sir. You spoke about corruption within the aviation sector. Former Minister Osita Chidoka spoke about corruption, spoke about having to arrest customs officers, asking for bribes. But also very recently, the EFCC did arraign the former Minister of Aviation, Hadi Sirika, on a 19.4 billion naira contract fraud. He has pled not guilty to that along with his brother. Now, do you believe that the current minister, Festus Keyamo, is doing enough to fight corruption within your industry and within the sector? And do you think that the industry needs to be more transparent when we talk about corruption and fighting corruption?
I totally agree that corruption is a big issue. For people that know me, it's not a hidden secret. I've burnt my fingers with issues of corruption with no apologies. There's a lot of hypocrisy in the industry, just like there's a lot of hypocrisy with regards to the fight against corruption in Nigeria. And I write severally and variously in various fora talking about this hypocrisy of expectations of Nigerians. We are hypocritical about corruption. It is not corruption when we are the ones doing it, but it is corruption when it is somebody doing it and we are not benefiting from it. We need to come out of that paradox if we want to deal with corruption. At a point, I became a pariah in the industry just because we spoke to the issues which everybody knows is true. Now we have a minister that says he wants to fight corruption. I'm happy to hear that. But the taste of the pudding is in the eating. I've heard a lot of saber rattling from a minister that I know is a doer. But moving forward, because he was not in the industry before, secondly, he was not in public sector. I'm sure he's beginning to see those issues and it is playing out with his narrative. But the only way he can fight corruption within that industry, which should apply to other industries, is by action. Consequence management. And he should be ready also for corruption to fight back like this has fought back in my own case and the case of anybody that is fighting corruption. He should be ready to be called names and he should be ready to be ostracized. If he's really want to be politically correct, you cannot clean an industry, but there's a snag to it. There's also need for emotional intelligence to engage the critical stakeholders because the entire industry is not bad. We have people of timber and caliber. We have patriots that are personally low, that are good, that are for Nigeria. So for him to do that also, because a tree does not make a forest, he needs those people as his allied on his side to fight these vested interests that are highly and deeply entrenched. And fighting them, through this operational means, I dare say, may not be successful. So we need to see action. But for that to happen, you need to understand the ecosystem for you to fight the vested interest in the ecosystem. How do you know the ecosystem? Is by having the right people by your side, by listening to the voice of wisdom, objective views, rather than sycophants that will come around you, and they are always there. I call them the undertakers or the ushers of ministers that usher them out, and then the same ministers that were with the minister that is facing graft today are busy insulting that minister and calling him names, and I'm seeing them hovering around the new ministers like sugar ants around sugar. That being said, action is what will take out corruption. And for the person that is driving anti-corruption to be above board, quintessential leadership is very critical. And one of the ways for him to do it easily, because Festus Keyamo SAN is operating at a strategic level. He should be less operational. Allow those other people at the operational level or technical level to drive them. And then sanction when you need to and, reward when you need to. with zero tolerance to indolence and non-compliance. With that, he will have more time to do what I was talking about, the strategic aspect of aviation, and also to be able to cleanse the sector. You allow people to play out their hands, and if you have any iota of sign of indolence or corruption, deal with it decisively so that people will know. Otherwise, dealing with these vested interests that are entrenched will slow you down, and then the next thing you start having banana peels, of course, because it's not your territory. If you claim to know this territory and you run on this territory, you may trip. So dear, step by step, Honorable Minister.
Okay, dear, step by step. Let's move this conversation quickly as we start to wrap up to the role of private sector investments and partnerships, how it plays in developing and expanding Nigeria's aviation infrastructure. And case in point, I will talk about what we know what happened with Air Peace, for example, where where we saw that route that was launched from Lagos to London, basically disrupts the status quo. There was an intense price war, and we could see airlines like British Airways and even Virgin reduce their prices by 50%. Isn't that something that maybe the government should be looking into to see how they can further partner with private partners and see how they can also help reduce this price rates?
Well, again, it's about the strategy. I commend Honorable Minister Festus Keyame SAN for this milestone. If anything, nobody can take it away from him that Air Peace has been able to break through that barrier to have the Gatwick leg activated. And we are happy that also the small, what I call booby trap that was, flagged out during the operations of Air Peace has been resolved. I'm happy the minister came to say it has been resolved. I wouldn't want us to be defending all the time. If there are responsibilities to be taken, take it and move on. Now, talking about private sector, which is one of his agenda actually to improve the sector, my small 10-kobo thought is this. The private sector needs support like no other time. But the support for the private sector will be ineffectual if there is no recalibration of that sector. What do I mean? You have a sector that requires serious capacities in terms of finance, serious capacity in terms of operational capacity and technical capacity. But importantly, since it is a private sector, the key success pillar is corporate governance. If you don't have corporate governance, all the support you will give that industry will run down this drain. I give you an instance. Honorable Minister was on this station a couple of days ago or weeks, and he talked about a very germane point with regards to the Cape Town Convention and the wet lease issues around, the inability of the private sector, to get leases, and the way and manner they are breaching those leases. And I hear Minister loud and clear saying it's a legal issue, but I dare say with all due respect, it's a strategic issue. Because even when you deal with this legal issue, which is supposed to be, a subset of a strategy, a legal framework is supposed to be a subset of strategy, the model, the operations and all that.
Thank you
if
so much,
you
sir.
come and recalibrate the industry the way the banking industry was done, then we will have an industry that is proper, run within the framework of a corporate governance, such that these airlines may have to be merged together to have more capacity. The way and manner the private airlines are run today, I dare say, will not be sustainable until they come together to be bigger, firmer, and run on a platform of corporate governance that will be sustainable.
All right, then. Thank you so much, Malam Baba Yusuf, strategist, policy analyst, and group CEO, Global Investment and Trade Company. Your analysis, of course, on the morning show is deeply appreciated.